One of our learners, he had just come from Vietnam. Mom told us that he had little but no English. So he went over on his own. We just had the blocks laid out, and he went over and he started constructing a bridge. So he ended up making it as a ramp. So he started off and then made it go up and across. So we went over and we asked him, what are you making? He said, a bridge. He said, in Vietnam, there are only small bridges. And I was like, oh. Kanisha went over and she got a blue scarf and she put it down just to see what he would do. And he's like, this is the river. And in Vietnam, we take the canoe and we go under the bridge in the river. He said, but our bridges are small. And I said, small? So have you ever seen a big bridge? And he goes, yes, the bridge to go to the USA. So he made that contrast with the difference between the small bridges and the big bridges. We also asked him about, has he ever been on a big bridge? And he said, no, only small bridges, because Vietnam only has small bridges. So it was interesting to see him come out first day, coming from Vietnam and being able to not only express his culture, but things in places that he's been.
So what was interesting was he talked about the big bridge and he talked about how it was away from Canada to the US. So we decided, because it was such a rich form of play, we noticed also that as he was engaging with the materials, he didn't have enough blocks, so he ended up getting other blocks to kind of build it. And as we consolidated our thinking around it, we started noticing that the blocks were going up by increments of 1. And then it got to a point where the bridge had stacked up 7 blocks, and it just kept having pillars of 7, and that's why it was flat. So we kind of explored and problem solved that together as a group. And what we noticed were other learners started joining in on the learning. So some started documenting what it is that was offered. Others started manipulating and trying to replicate what it is that he had offered. So it really added another layer to play for us. And what was interesting too was we decided as a team that we would change up the materials, as we've been talking a lot in our math talks around decomposing shapes. So right now we have offered them a rectangle and we asked the question, what do you know about the shape? What they showed us using manipulatives was that a rectangle can be 2 squares, but it can also be 4 triangles. So we decided to offer the materials in that way in this invitation. To kind of consolidate that thinking. But what we also wanted to do was we wanted to bring in things that were relevant to the learners. So we brought in a book around the Muslim book of shapes. So this was offered to them to kind of see how they might interact with that book and those concepts around just things like a mosque and all the shapes that can be seen within a mosque. And we also offered some buildings that might be familiar to them in terms of their cultures and where their parents are from or where they're from. So we put in the Taj Mahal, and we also put in the CN Tower. And what was really interesting were the same capital blocks that were used to create the bridge were the same ones that were used to create a CN Tower. So the learners started exploring by showing us all these patterns. So they put 2 blocks together and then 2 on the side, and they kept stacking, but they were doing it in a way that kind of showed us what patterns could be in a structure. So we explored that after, but what was interesting was other learners started joining in on the play. They started creating the CN Tower. They started talking about where they see the CN Tower. Some people had misconceptions about the CN Tower not actually being in Toronto, but being in another country. So others were like, oh, we've seen it. It's really far, but we've seen it before. So it was interesting to have those conversations around that building, but it was familiar to some and not all. But we offered a book that kind of spoke to maybe their identities, their religion, and also offered them ways to take those shapes and kind of use them in a way that kind of elicits thinking around building and engineering.